Like,
Because there's a space between them.
let me see. So,
Together.
do you have it open right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's your page, right?
You see the space?
So you want to minimize this space right here?
Yeah.
All right, so let's typically open up the developer tools, and then
Alright.
so that's so it looks like the border is, or the margin at the bottom is 33. So if we change it to, let's say, 10, see how it goes up.
Oh.
So it's the margin at the bottom that's giving you that number. Since it was like 33.33, it might be like something EM.
It's because I didn't specify the margin at the top.
Let's see if it was specified. So if you look here at styles, padding bottom, margin top.
I didn't specify the.
Yeah, that's probably why, because it wasn't specified. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, the Visual Code one more time.
This part right here?
Yeah. What? So like equals to and dollar sign and zero.
Oh, this right here?
What does that do?
Oh, she didn't actually write that. Yeah, this is something that that Chrome is adding.
Oh.
What is it for? I'm not sure what it does. Do you know what it does for him?
Confuses students.
Yeah, but if we actually go to view page source, that's what she actually wrote in the code. So you can see that it's just H1. Yeah. So you have that's what she did. And here, you put your phone number and other stuff. Cool. Any other questions?
Oh, I was curious about why I had to, at the bottom, I put a link back to bring you back up to the top, because I hate scrolling. So when I first styled it, I had to just style for that div ID, and it was still like looking like a link. So then I decided to just put the A next to the ID tag, but then that put it over on the side. So then I separated out some of the styling, like I put some of the styling on the div ID and then some of the styling on the div ID A. So the one stylings that were specifically for the link. And I was wondering why it needed to be separate. I found out with certain things that I needed to separate them out or be more specific about which part I was talking about in order to style it. And then sometimes some of the styling would override other styling, so then I had to be more, like I found I had to be a lot more specific than I thought I would have to be to differentiate the different stylings, because they would override each other. I was wondering why.
Why it overwrites?
Yeah, but why wouldn't it choose the one that you specifically gave, say you have a container within a container within a container, and if you're dealing with the middle container and you're doing styling for that, why wouldn't use that to override the bigger container? I mean, not override everything in the container, but like say that's, I don't know if I'm being very clear. Like if you have a div and you have a paragraph inside the div, you have a span inside the paragraph, you have a styling for the span. why the styling span might be overwritten by the styling of the paragraph or the styling did.
That, I don't know if we talked about this, but that's just the way that the styling works, is that if you have an element inside another element, then the styling of the parent element gets inherited by the child.
Even if you don't ask it to inherit? it'll-
Yeah, that's the default. That's the default behavior, yeah.
I mean, I figured it out, and I was fixing it, it was so annoying at first, like, I couldn't figure out why certain things were changing.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Well, I realized I had stopped doing just cover all styling, like all paragraphs of this. I would do this paragraph on this page in this section has this styling, because I wanted different paragraph stylings, and I realized if I just did a paragraph style in general, and then try to do specific ones, the general would override all the specific ones.
did you try like to do a class for each
That's what
different type of
I ended up
paragraph?
doing.
Okay. Yeah, typically,
But I started to get rid of the general one, except for the parts that could be for every single one.
Yeah.
I took all of the things that didn't count for every single paragraph out of the general paragraph styling, because it would override it.
okay. And you probably don't want to style like a table, or like you don't want to style your elements. Like you don't want to say a table and then style, or like div and then style.
Yeah.
I think what you really want to do, if you're doing this more professionally, is you just want to have classes that style things, and then always add a class to the element that you want to style.
I discovered it kind of weird, actually. I can add classes to everything, but yeah, that's absolutely works a lot better.
Yeah. Any other questions? What about let's see, the people online? I don't know if you guys heard that question online. The question was just about styling and inheritance. I think they're fine. Okay, so we'll move on to the next topic. So that was the last few days that we've met. We've had a little overview of just HTML and CSS, right? So now we're gonna delve deeper into forms, and we're gonna delve a little bit more into Sinatra. And today is gonna be kind of a review again of what you've covered with Sinatra, what you've seen with Sinatra, but we're gonna incorporate what we've learned about HTML and CSS, and now we're gonna add Sinatra because we did forms previously with CSS, but if we click submit on the form, it didn't do anything, right? So now the next step is that when you submit a form, you want something to happen. And so that's what we're gonna start to go into. So I'm gonna create a new project, and so this one's gonna be forms. So I'm just gonna create a new directory, mkdir forms, right? And then I'm gonna go inside that directory, and I'm gonna initialize my Git repository. This is just stuff that we've done before. All right. I think I cleared it. So this. All right. So now I'm going to, inside that forms directory, I'm going to create a new file called the app.rb, just a Ruby file. And then I'm going to create a folder inside that forms folder, just called public. Okay. So that's the structure of my app. Remember that before when we started Apache, Apache gave us access to everything in Workspace. It gave us access to everything in this directory. And we could go inside each directory and it would list all the files, and then we can click on a file. So now this is a little bit different, but the only difference is that our application is going to serve files from the public directory. So before we were serving files from Workspace, any file that we put in Workspace, we could access from Workspace. Now we're going to serve files from the public directory. But before we can use Sinatra, we probably have to install it. So just do a gem install Sinatra. It should be installed. And then open up your app.rb file. And then right here at the top, you're just going to write require Sinatra. What that does is that it just loads all the Sinatra code. So this Ruby, when we run this Ruby file, we're going to be loading all the Sinatra code. And then this is only for Cloud9. We need set :bind and then 0.0.0.0. So we're just telling Sinatra to listen for incoming connections on the IP address 0.0.0. By default, it would try to listen on localhost, and it doesn't work with the way Cloud9 is set up. So this is just something that we need for Cloud9, which you wouldn't need them if you were doing this locally. Right, so then the next thing we want to do is we want to do get, and then as a string / do and end. And then we just do hello world. And that's our Sinatra app.
Hey, Ramiro.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, can you hold right there one moment so I had to restart my Cloud9.
Okay, so just leave the code there.
Yeah, for a minute if you don't mind. I appreciate it. But wait a minute,
Okay.
I think I can just write it down.
Okay.
For some reason, Cloud9 doesn't like me today. And
All right.
we're going in the app.rb and requiring Sinatra and then the set bind 00.
Yep.
Okay. So you're saying this is on a public server?
This is inside the directory forms
Okay.
and outside of the public directory. So in the forms directory, you have a directory called public that's empty right now, and then a file called app.rb that has this code.
Okay. So what is the backslash inside the quotations and the do for?
This right here is a string that we're passing to this method get.
Okay, for the hello world.
Yeah, and so we're going to go over this. So the method, we have a method called get that we're passing it a string, and then we're also passing it a block with this do and end. And so inside this block, we return a string, and we're gonna see in a minute. We're gonna go over what that does in a minute.
So let me ask you this: with the having to install the gem, so when we do the bundle update and all of that, it's not included in the gem installs?
No, this is we're not using bundler right now. We're just using gem. So just to install it, you would do gem install Sinatra.
Okay, gotcha.
What was your question, Kristen?
I was thinking that the slash means like a new page and that it would print hello world on the page.
Yeah, this is what the code does. Yeah.
Oh,
Uh-huh. But you should also understand what the Ruby code is doing, right? Which with the Ruby code is get is a method, and then you're passing it a string. You're passing a string to that method, and then you're also passing it a block. And so when this code runs, it's going to call the get method. It's going to pass it the string /, and what that's doing is setting up some configuration with Sinatra, so that when we go to our server and then we pass this URL for just /, then Sinatra is going to call this block. The block is going to return this string hello world, and then it's going to send it back to us.
Okay, so I didn't get that, what you got.
Say that what?
Okay, so when I did the gem install for the Sinatra, where you got one gem install, it installed 2 additional.
Oh, I already had Sinatra installed.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Okay. Any other questions?
if you added like something
Oh.
to it, like the name of the page
Mhm.
between and then the string that you pass to get, would that be like in the URL part of the browser?
You're saying like that? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so I was thinking.
So, and Jorge points out something good, that if you forget that with Ruby you don't need parentheses when you're calling a method like that, get with the string is equivalent to get parentheses the string and then another parentheses. Right? So get is a method. We're calling a method, passing it a string, and also passing it a block. So we're passing get 2 things, a string and a block. And so most of the important code for us is going to be inside that block, because that's the code that's going to run when we go to that URL.
Yeah.
So now to start your server, you go to and do Ruby and then app.rb. Now you can see that now Sinatra is listening. And so let's see. Yeah, listening on TCP 0000, that's the IP address, and then port 8080. And so to open your app, you can go here to application and then open, and you can see that it says hello world. Right? So the reason it gave us that immediately was because we did get /, and so / is essentially this URL. Just the root. Yep. Oh, yeah, go ahead. So one thing that you should take a look at is that over here on our command line under Sinatra, we have this number 70, 62, 112, 154. You might have the same number, or you might have a different number, but that's the IP address of the machine that did the request. So my computer, when I go to that URL, is doing a request to Sinatra, and Sinatra is saying, oh, I just got a request from this IP address, and it tells you the date and the time that the request was made, and then what was requested. So you see this get. So get is just saying, hey, I'm going to request a page from you or a file from you. And then the next thing after get is the file name that you're requesting. And in this case, it's just /. And since I did it 2 times, you see that it's listed twice there. So if I refresh,
Can you see the Apache server? I have to kill the Apache server. Can you try to? That might work.
oh, are you guys getting like a poor bind or something?
Yes.
So yeah, you might have been working with Apache, so you have to stop Apache.
I stopped it, but it's not, the site is, the page is not the same.
Yeah, he's getting the same error too.
So did you stop Apache already? Or-
Yeah.
So what? Let's see. So if I do service Apache 2 start, and then I do that, and I get that, right? I don't know if that, is that what you guys get? So somebody's already performing on 8080.
No, that's not enough.
No, what I'm getting is that there's no server. No application seems to be running here.
Oh,
That's what I
okay.
don't have.
Let's
the-
look at it. So, and you did Ruby.
You don't have any other cloud
Yeah,
line,
that's just-
Windows, like,
that's where I am.
and Chrome.
So did you run Ruby at the RB?
Wait,
Is that it? You just have to do Ruby at the RB.
I thought it did.
So now try it.
I thought it was refreshed.
Try to refresh it. Okay. So you got it?
Okay.
I thought it did that already.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how to fix that one.
Does it say?
It's saying that the address isn't used, so like, there's a server running over there for some reason.
Oh, I did do it already, but, there times to try that.
You stopped Apache, so do service Apache 2 status. So do service Apache 2 stop. Try it again. Here.
What is Apache? It's just a server?
Yeah, it's just a file server. So it's not
It's like Puma or stuff like that?
kind of, yeah, but it's just for serving files and that's it.
Okay.
Thanks. So we were working before with the HTML stuff. We were using Apache
Got it.
to just serve HTML files. All right, so you guys, everyone then should be here, right? And then I refresh my page, and you can see that that's my IP address, and that's the request that I'm making. It's that, right? So now I'm gonna request a different file here. I'm gonna do, let's see, icon.png. And it says Sinatra doesn't know these, did he? So that's because Sinatra tried to look for either something like this where we define that URL, or also try to look for a file that was that has that name and it couldn't find it. So that's why I returned this. So what we're going to do now, well, you see that here's that request. We have a get, and then we have a /icon.png.
Is that the error message?
The,
404, is 404 the couldn't find
yeah.
the website?
Yeah, so that's a good point. You're going to see here in Sinatra that this is the request that was made, and then here's what the code that Sinatra replies with. So there, like 404, you've probably seen 404. That means not found in HTTP language. So the server, every time you request a file from a server, it replies with a code, an error code, and also the contents of that response. So here, I'm sorry?
We can edit that, right? We can change.
Yeah.
The error message.
Yep. And so 200, you see that the first one was 200. 200 means success. Right? We found the file, and here's the file. 404 means we couldn't find that file. And then there's other messages. So there's like 302 means redirect to this other location because the file is there. 500 means there was an error with the server, couldn't process your request. So there's a few different codes, but the ones that are probably most commonly used for 200 for success, but that's one we don't see because if it's success, our browser is just going to display the page for us. 404, oftentimes like we'll see it because the browser displays it 404, right? So questions? So another thing that you can do is you can open up the console for the developer tools, and if you click on network, you see that right now it doesn't show anything, and that's because I just opened up the developer tools. But if for example, if I change this URL to just that, you see that there's an entry there, and let me close that. So you see that the status is 200, which is success, right? And then it also tells us the size of the file. So it's 215 bytes. And it tells us how long it took for the response. So it took 306 milliseconds. So we can see that information in the browser, or we can see that information from the server, right? So the way this works is that we initiate a request from the browser, and the browser sends the request to the server, and then the server replies to the browser, and the browser gets the response and displays the page for us. So in this public directory, I'm going to add some files. So I'm going to take an image that we had before. So let's take this one, and then I'm just going to copy it there. So zion.jpg in this public folder. So now here in my URL, I can do /zion.jpg. You can see that it just downloads that image. Okay. So we can put in that public folder, we can put different files, and then with the browser, we can view those files. Right? So it's very similar to what we did in the past with Apache, that it was just serving files. Now we just have them in public. Okay. Questions? Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna add another file to public, and this file is gonna be an HTML file. So let's call it form.html. And then we're gonna open it up right here. And we're just gonna create an HTML document with an HTML tag, open tag and close tag, and then open body tag and a close body tag. And then I'm just going to do an H1 for HTML form. And then a form tag. And inside that form tag, I have an input element with type text, and name is going to be email. Okay. And then I have another input type, but that one's going to be type submit. And then this, we're not going to give this one a name. We're just going to give it a value of submit. That's a very simple HTML HTML document. All right, and then I'm gonna go over here to my browser, and I'm just gonna do form.html. That's the name of the file, right? And you see that I got it back. I got that HTML back, and the browser rendered that for me. And so I have a text field, and I have a little button. So if I type in an email, say I type in my email address, I click submit, the form is submitted, but nothing happens yet, right? Because I only created that form, and I'm not doing anything with that information. Any questions? Okay. Now I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to type again just form.html. Right. So one thing that you might have noticed is if I type in my email address and then I click submit, you see that the URL changes. So now instead of just having form.html, now I have form.html question mark email equals and then the email address. Right. And then there's instead of the @ symbol, I have a %40. But other than that, it is the same, right? So what happens there is that when I submit a form, the information from my form is encoded in the URL. And so after that question mark indicates, okay, there's form information coming now. And so after that question mark, we have the form information. And this email, that's coming from what we named our field. So our input field, we named it email. And that's why it's saying email equals. And then Ramiro.Rodriguez %40 at gmail.com. That's coming because I typed in that. Now, with a URL, in the URL, you can't technically, you're not allowed to have the @ symbol. So that's why you have this %40. So the browser encodes the @ symbol as %40, and that's just an encoding that's done by the browser. So now let's add another input field after email. let's say input type equals another text field. And this one, let's say that it's going to be, let's call it age. So if I refresh that, now I have two text fields, right? And then in the first one, I'm going to put my email address. And the second one, I'm going to put age and click submit. Now you see that it's what we had before, email equals the email address. But then after the email address, we have an @ symbol. And then we have age equals 25. So that the age comes from the other field, input field that we have. And 25 is what I entered. And then let's see. So the n% says, okay, there's a new value coming. So, but all this information from the form is encoded in the URL. Right? Any questions? Cool. All right. Makes sense. All right. So now this form has this form tag has an attribute called action, and that action attribute tells us where we're going, the URL where we want to submit our form, so where we want to send the information. By default, if you don't have an action, the browser just tries to submit the form to the same URL. But over here, we're going to change the URL because you're going to see in a little bit why. And we're going to change it to submission / submission. So we have to refresh our form again. Form.html. So I'm going to just type form.html. The reason we have to refresh it is because we saved, but the browser just keeps the copy of the last thing we downloaded. So every time we change our code, we have to refresh our page. All right. So now I'm going to type in the same thing. But now you see that instead of just doing form.html !, and then the information, now it says / submission ? And then the information, right? So it just submitted the information, but just to a different URL. That's the only difference, right? Sure.
We have it saved to a file. So create a file called submission, would it save there, or would it need to be another kind?
If we create a file called submission here in public,
Yeah.
it would just what Sinatra tries to do is it says, okay, there's a file here, I'm going to give you that file. But there's no code, no Ruby code that runs, so it's not going to do anything.
Okay. So that would be like when we do the data user input and we tell it to write it, break it down into this, write it here.
Yeah.
We have to write some.
So we're going to have to write some code that does that. Yep, exactly. And that's where the Sinatra part comes in, because that enables us gives us a framework to write that code in. So if we go to app.rb, we're gonna write that here, get / submission, and then do. Now we're specifying, we're telling Sinatra, hey, when somebody requests the URL submission, run this code to give them what they want. So right now, let's just return success as a string. And then to start the whole process, now I have to go back to form.html. Okay, so I have my form, and I'm going to fill it out again, and then click submit. I think I have to restart every time, right, Jorge?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have to restart Sinatra. So I'm going to hit the back button to go back, and then I'm going to click submit again. And now you see that it says success, right? So that code is running for us. This code right here is running. So instead of, if we look at the source code right here, we just have that success. But instead of returning that, we can return an HTML document. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to do HTML, close the HTML, and then body, close the body. And then I'm going to do H1, close H1, and then success. So that's like our HTML document, except that it's just in one line. So I'm going to go back. I have to restart Sinatra. And then click submit. And now you see that we have an HTML document. We can add some styling to that. But essentially what we're doing is that this string that we are creating in Ruby is, if it's HTML, it gets sent back to the browser, and the browser renders it as HTML. Right? For the moment right now, we're not going to worry about making it HTML because the browser still, we can still see what's happening. But later on, we want to be generating an HTML document. So now to get, now the next thing we want to do is we want to get that information, the email address and the age, and to do something with it. So there's a method called params that we call, and that method returns a hash with this information right here. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do puts params, and then I'm going to call the method inspect. Did you guys see the method inspect in Ruby, in the last Ruby class?
Not much, no. We
No.
used
Did you use something else?
Bybug and Pry.
Okay. So this inspect method is what you would probably see in Bybug or Pry. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm also going to, after that, I'm going to do string success. Okay, restart Sinatra, and go back, submit the form. Okay, so you see success, but over here, you see that in this line right here, we also have a hash that has two values. One is email, and one is age. And then the email is the email address, and the H is the H. But you can see that the @ symbol is back. And that's because Sinatra converts back the %40 that we have in the URL. It converts it back to an @ symbol. So we have this hash with the information that was passed to us from the user, and now we could do something with that information.
You know, does Rails do the same thing where like params is just a hash at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. And it's not of type hash. It's called like it's a different class.
In Rails?
Yeah.
Because in Sinatra, it's just a plain old hash, right?
Yeah, I think.
So Rails adds other class to it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's what I was saying.
Yep.
Like, the key to the hash, it'd be the same each time you submit different emails. Would that be a problem?
That's a good question. So the key just tells you what that piece of information is, and then the value tells you what the email address is. But then, depending on what you like, if you were trying to save a new student each time with a different email address, then you would say, okay, a new student with this email address, let me save that to the database. So the key is just to tell you what the value of each field that the user filled out in the form. Does that make sense?
For each submission.
Yeah.
That would allow for you to search for that email or search for a specific. This email would just pull up all the emails.
Well, that would be some specific code that would do that. So that we would have to write some code that would search for emails, which we haven't done yet. So far, the only thing that we've done is, this hash params is just giving us the information from the user, from the browser. Once we have that information, then we can do many different things. Like one could be search for that email address. Another one would be create a user with that email address. Another thing would be just send a text message. Yep.
But that's only available for you to do if you use that params, correct?
Say that again.
The only way you can do all that with the user information is with the params.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Params is kind of like the interface that this is where Sinatra put what the information that the user sent. That's where Sinatra puts it in.
Okay.
For-
So it's like a
for you.
secret storage type.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Or think of the way I think of it is like that's the source of your truth, right? Like what is the source of your information you need for your code to begin working? It's params.
Okay.
So like if you need information, say from the user or an action that happens in the view, then you probably need to pass it through the params so the server knows what information it has to work with.
So it's pretty much, if you don't have params, it's not really saved.
Well, params is coming from the user. So if you're always going to have params, but sometimes params is going to be completely empty
Okay,
if the user didn't send any information.
okay, gotcha.
But it's not saved.
Yeah.
It's save it somewhere.
Correct.
Yeah. The only thing params is doing is taking this after the question mark, is taking all that I just highlighted, is taking that and then putting it into a hash for you, into hash form for you. And that's it. That's the only thing that it's
So
doing.
the hash form makes it easier to sort out, search.
Yeah, it makes it easier to work with. Yeah. Otherwise, the only thing you would have is one long string, and then you would have to take the information from that string
Gotcha.
and to use in your application.
So we try to remember, hey, this 40% is actually an at sign, everything else that it gotta do is rather than it come out with a place so we can.
Yep.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
gotcha.
So it's a thing that Sinatra is doing to help us. Cool. Any other questions? Not right now. Okay.
Just curious.
Yeah, you have a question? Yeah, you can ask. Okay. All right. So then, let's see. All right. So now that we have that, we know that that's a hash. That's a very important concept to internalize in your brain, because we're going to be using it a lot. So now with that params, we could create another string, right? So for example, I can do hello. Let me delete that params inspect. You guys did a string concatenation in the last class, right? Where you have two strings and then you add them together to make one longer string. Right? So we have that string hello, and then we know that that hash has a key called email, and that email has the value of the email address, right? So then what I can do is I can concatenate that string with params email. So I have this right here is an expression that evaluates to a string, right? Because params is a hash, and then the square brackets right after params, that square bracket says access the value of the hash that has this key, the key email. So if I save that and then restart Sinatra, and then go back and submit the form again, you can see that it puts it here in the inline, right? So we're taking the information from the URL from that was submitted in the form. We're taking it, and now we're doing something with it. And what we're doing, the thing that we're doing right now is we're just like echoing back to the user, hello, with the email address.
If you want to just switch it out and use what same as the age, you just switch out the email age. And say hello.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
Yep, exactly. So one thing to notice, though, is that, say that again?
I was just, because there's no space there.
Oh. So one thing to notice is that, let's see, before over here, where do we have that? Oh, right here. You see that the number 25 is a string, right? It's not an integer. So when your user is filling out that form, everything that he fills out and gets sent back to us is going to be sent back as strings. It's not going to be sent back as integers or floats or anything like that. So whenever you have a field that you want it to be a number, then you probably have to do some conversion to convert it to an integer if you want to use an integer. So for example, let's say that let me go back to this form, and what I wanted to do at the end of class today was create a little calculator that you enter one number and another number, And then when you submit the form, it returns the sum of those two numbers. So I'm going to change my form so that it's, instead of email, is, let's see, left. And instead of age is right. So for the left side of the sum and the right side of the sum. So if I go back and then I refresh this and look at my source code, then you see that the name changed from email to age. It changed from left into left and right. So if I write here 5 and this is 4 and I click submit, well, what happened? Yeah, that's because we haven't changed our Sinatra code, but we'll change it in a little bit. But you can see that in the URL, we have now question mark left equals 5 and right equals 4.
In fact, like you just ran into that issue, right, that you were talking about, which is, oh no, it's a different one. You have nil.
Yeah, that's because now I'm not submitting email, right? In my information that I'm sending to the browser, I'm not sending email. And over here in our code, we're expecting params to have email. And so our code is crashing because the user didn't send email.
Because you could, like on IRB, like I guess do a hash and then try to access email on it.
Okay, let's see.
That'll show.
Well, we will be able to access it and we'll have nil. But then when we do the string concatenation, that's when it's going to error because it's trying to concatenate a string with nil.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So let me do that. Here I have IRB. So let's say that our params now has left is the string 5 and right is the string 4. Right? So that's what we have with params. So if I do params and then I try to access email, I get nil from the hash, right? So then if I do hello and then plus nil,
Yeah.
you see that it gives me that error because I have to convert nil to a string in order for me to concatenate. So that's what's happening. So I have hello plus params email. And so it can't do it because params email evaluates to nil. All right, so we have to change our Sinatra code to reflect what we did. So, right, so now what I want to do is I want to return, well, first I want to convert left to an integer and right to an integer. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's see, left equals params left dot 2i, right? I think you guys have seen that before, right? How to convert a string to an integer. Okay. And then right equals params right dot 2i. So now I have one variable left that has an integer and another variable right that has another integer. And then sum equals left plus right. And now I need to send back sum, right? So I can just do a sum. So let's see if that works. Restart Sinatra. Just wait for you guys to catch up. Okay, so then go back to my form and submit again. All right. Or I got a
Yeah, that's
503.
what I got.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. So I don't think we can send, so sum is an integer. I don't think we can send back an integer. We have to send back a string. So let's convert sum to a string. So let's do sum.2s, save that. And let's see if that works. Yeah, so now you see that we get 9. Now any number that you put here, like when you put 5 and 90, and it returns 95, right? Or 900 plus 90, it's 990. So now we have something like that's pretty cool, right? Because it's dynamically sending back to the browser something that the code is running. The server is running that code and then sending back to us something that was generated from the form that we submitted. Questions? All right, so we can take a 5-minute break. 7:38, we're a little over, but someone wants to get some water or stretch their legs. Take it.
So you move that under. It does work, okay. I had done it before a different way. Instead of doing the left equals and the right equals, I just did params with the brackets left dot 2i plus params bracket right dot 2i. And I tried to put it to the screen, but it gave me the error, so I thought I just wrote it wrong, but it was because it needed to be sum to string.
Okay.
To string.
Yeah.
So it works either way.
Cool.
I was curious about that.
Fell asleep?
I'll flip it.
Oh, I have a question right here. I haven't gotten to it yet, but we'll submit it tonight. Okay.
You have to submit that font also thing was not working. I was forgetting the step, so I'm just gonna add it up.
Okay. Yeah, so what she was talking about was that you could do all this in one line. We did it right here in 4 lines, but you could do it like that instead of creating variables. And then 2s.
Is that really right way of doing it, or just wrong way?
there's no right way of doing it. I think like this one's a little bit nicer here because it's just one line, so it's less to read, less code. The idea is always to make it as readable, as easy to read for somebody else that doesn't know the code, as easy to make it as easy for them to read.
So it's more so preference, like somebody whose job is to come in and clean up code.
Yeah.
They might do that, or somebody who doesn't like to read code, then they might add blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay.
Because maybe to them it's more understandable to do one line at a time. And also do it for yourself, because if you have to come back and look at this code like days later, then you're not going to remember like, oh, this is what I was doing. You're not going to pick it up immediately. So think of yourself also as a different person that's going to be reading this code that doesn't know what the code does.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Better forward that.
Oh, yeah. Like you wanna, yeah, most of the time you want the code to be readable because you're gonna end up going back to it. And also you also want to make your code easy to change, because most likely you'll come back and change it as well.
Oh, yeah.
I like when things can be concise, just
Yeah.
because code adds up, it starts to get to be a lot. So you can put everything
In one, yeah.
concisely in one line, it's so much nicer.
Yeah.
I had to go back and look through my own code and be like, huh? Oh my gosh. I need to do some fighting.
Cool. All right, so we'll continue. All right, so I think we understand what's going on here, right? We have this. Let me just test this to see if it's still working. Yeah, it's still working. Okay. So I'm gonna set this to a variable like sum equals, and that's the output, right? That's the value of the sum. So right now, what I'm returning, the only thing that I'm returning is I'm returning just that string with the result. What I want to do now, though, is I'm going to return an HTML document with the result embedded somewhere in there. So to do that, I'm going to do a string HTML, HTML, and then body, and then H1 that says result, and then I'm doing string interpolation, sum, and then H1. Okay, so do you have you guys seen string interpolation before? Okay. So yeah, this is just the only thing that we're replacing in this string is replacing, inserting sum in there. Okay. So I'm gonna have to restart Sinatra and go back there, and then let me do 6 plus 7 and submit. And now you have a nice, you don't have just the number, you have an actual HTML document. You have result 12. And so you can go back and change that to something else. But now your form is an HTML document, and then you're requesting another HTML document, and you get back an HTML document. So questions? All right, so one other thing is that right here in the URL, we have what we've been doing is that we have the form, and then we're filling out our form, and then clicking submit, right? But another thing that I can do is I can just edit the URL. So I'm going to change the URL to 70, left is 77. And you can see that that also works. So I don't actually need a form. I don't need to fill out a form to get the same result. I can just modify the URL, and I get the same thing happens. The code that converts left to an integer and right to an integer and adds them, that code still runs. Right? Okay. So that's nice, right? But when this is not always nice to have this URL, to have all your data in the URL. Because like, what if you were sending a password, and then somebody comes behind you and, oh, that's your password, right? So there's other ways of still sending information, but not in the URL. So let's look at that now. So let's go back to our form right here. And in our form tag, we're going to add another attribute called method. And then let's change it to post. So I'm going to go back to the form. Oh, to go back one more. Okay, here it is. And then refresh the form. So let's do 8 and 8. And then I'm going to click submit. And
Did you read your server?
For the views, you don't have to.
Or you don't have to?
for the 8 raw HTML, you don't have to. But now you see that it doesn't work anymore, right? But now it's giving Sinatra is giving us this message that says post submission do hello world, which looks very similar to what we have, except that the only thing that's changed is this post, right? And so that's what this, when we changed this method post, we were just changing the type of request that we're sending to the Sinatra server. Now here in our list of requests that we've done to our Sinatra server, you see that we have get, and then we have post. And that post is the last one that we did, the last form submission that we did. We submitted that form using a post request versus a get request. Now, the difference between a post request and a get request is that with a get request, the form parameters are in the URL. With a post request, the form parameters are not in the URL. They're hidden somewhere else. So that's the main difference. It's probably the only difference really in terms of how it looks to Sinatra.
So if you're doing something and it's using sensitive information, you always make sure it's post replicated.
Yeah. For forms, I think typically most of the time you're just going to use post for forms, just to get it, just in case.
Is there any cases where you would use get more than post?
Yeah. So when you have a form that you're using maybe to search something, sometimes it's nice to use get, because then the parameters are there in the URL, and then what somebody can do is they can just highlight the URL, send it to someone else, and that other person can click on that URL and open up the same search query that you did.
Without having to type it all in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's probably one of the main reasons for using get in a form instead of post. But other than that, I probably just use post. Right? What do you think?
I think like the easiest way to think about it is if you want to change something somewhere, you probably want to do post. Whereas if you just are asking for information, you're doing get. right? So like I think like when you search for an article, you're not really changing how the article looks, right? You're just getting an article. Whereas if you're writing an article yourself and you're gonna publish it, you're changing how the website looks like because you're posting an article. So that's kind of like the main difference that I would say.
As opposed to putting Git or something, I don't want to change it up. Or something.
Yeah, because if you do a get and you're modifying information, then that means that other people can go in and do a get request and modify information.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna tell Sinatra that we wanna use a post instead of a get. So I'm just changing it from get to post in my, and here in my block. So I'm using, now instead of using the method get, I'm using the method post. And that just tells Sinatra when somebody does a post request to this URL, to the submission URL, run this code. Before we had, when somebody does a get request with this URL, run this code. So I'm gonna go back. I have to restart Sinatra. All right, so click submit, and now you see that now it works, but now we don't have that information in the URL. And I mean, that information is still there, so it's just hidden. So if we open up the developer tools, let me clear them out, and then I click on submit. You see that right here, that's the submission. We got a status 200 response from the server. And if I click there, and here's the general information, request headers. So request headers is every time you make a request, the browser adds these headers, like it hides them from you, but it really sends them to the server. So right here, down here, you'll see that it says form data, and you see left 8 and right 8. And that's where the information is encoded.
You can't see that on every page.
You can see that, yeah, you can see that on every page that's submitted, yeah. So if like for example, we had a logging system, and then I open up the developer tools and I type in my password, and I click right here, I would be able to see, the password. Yeah, but so the only difference is that if you don't have developer tools open, then it's not in the URL, which is probably most commonly you won't have the developer tools open. So, yeah. Any questions? Okay, so let's see. So I'm just going to change my form. I'm going to go back to my form, and then I do a plus, and then change that submit to add. So now it probably looks, a little bit different, right? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, let's see, how did I intend this to work? Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do a drop down right here. So I have a number, a drop down, and then another number, and then the drop down is just going to be the arithmetic operations, plus, minus, divide, and multiply. So then the user is going to be able to select what operation they want and then the output, right? So right here, I'm going to change the add instead, should be equals. Right? And then right here, I want a select. So I'm going to do select. And then I'm going to give it a name, and then I can give it any name I want. So I'm going to give it operation. And then we're going to have 4 options. One's going to be a plus. Then another one's going to be a minus, times, and then divide. Okay. So let me refresh. So I have my little drop down. So if I have 6 times 7, then I want to hit equals, and it should show me the result of 6 times 7, right? So that's what we wanted to do, and we created this form to do that for us. And another thing that I'm going to just change so that we can see what's going on is I'm going to remove the post method so that we see the information in the URL. Right? That's really the only reason I'm doing it. Otherwise, we would be using the post instead of get. Okay, so then I'm going to go to here to the app.rb. I'm going to change it to get as well, and then restart Sinatra. And then refresh this. So 6, and then times 7 equals, and it says 13, right? Which is not right. Right. It's not. We're not taking that into consideration in our code, right? Now in the URL, you see that we have left equals 6, and operation equals star, and right equals 7. So we just have to look at that input operation, and then depending on what gets passed to us, then we have to do that operation. So does anybody have any idea what kind of Ruby construct how would we do that with Ruby?
Is it, is it viewing the stuff that you're choosing from the options as viewing them as string?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything is like it's passed to us in params is a string. Yeah.
Would it matter if you put operation inside of the squiggly bracket, squiggly brace?
Oh, the square brace, you mean?
Yes, not the square brace, the hashtag squiggly bracket.
Oh, like right here, you mean?
No, up between, you have to remove the plus.
Okay,
So
remove
then
the plus.
Change that into whatever's the result from operation.
So-
I'm not sure. Operation, but into, like.
How do you add that operation?
Yeah.
We're just saying, make sure you use the operation, because you can't just add.
Yeah.
Because you want to add it to.
I was wondering if it would matter if you put it inside of
Yeah, I think somebody wanted to say something from the video.
Add, like, add that part to it.
Christian, did you want to
Yes,
say?
I did. Could you do an if statement to select?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we want to do an if statement. An if statement for each of the operations.
Okay.
So
Okay, that makes sense.
so that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, good job.
Thank you.
So if params operation is equals plus, then we want to do the sum. So plus. So we have that, right? And then else if params operation equals minus, then do, instead of using sum, I'm going to change it to result because I don't know if it's going to be a sum or multiplication of what. I'm going to change it to result equals, and then I'm going to do that. But instead of a plus, I'm going to do a minus. And then else if params operation equals times, then the same thing, but with a times. And then else if params operation division result, instead of a minus, do a division. And then we have an end. And then right here we will have result. So let me restart Sinatra. And then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to submit. So 6 times 7, 42. Sounds right. So yeah, let me go back to the code so you can catch up looking at the code.
So Ramiro, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Okay, so the Ruby statements, their methods. So we want to change the integer to a string because of the word result, correct? Because I'm just asking because I was wondering if you took the result out, would it just actually just be an integer for each operation?
If I didn't do result equals, you mean?
Right.
Oh, if I didn't do result equals, then I wouldn't have that variable to put here for my in my string interpolation for the HTML in line 19. So right here in the line 19, I'm saying take this string and then insert the variable result in the middle of that string. And if I haven't defined the variable result,
Mhm.
then I wouldn't have that variable available to me to insert. So I'm just using it as I'm just using result as a temporary variable to store that, so then later on I can insert it into the string.
Okay.
I thought it was the easy way to do this.
Yeah.
So I copy and pasted, and just changed the like.
There is,
That's what I did too.
There is.
There's an easier way. Yeah.
But why, my submit button still says submit instead of equal.
Oh, if you go back to your HTML form, do you have for value? Do you have equals?
Yeah,
Did you refresh your form?
or like stop it and start.
Just click on the browser. Just click like on the refresh button.
Yeah, it still says submit.
Did you save your form?
It adds everything, it, divides all that, it does that, it just.
Do you want to take a look at it? Right.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's
This changed, and
a lot of code, right? So the key thing was to get the concept to use an if statement, and now we have the code. This looks like a lot of code, but we can simplify this code. So let's try to do that right now. So one thing that you see is that we're repeating params left to I, params right to I. We're repeating that a lot, right? So instead of having that, what I can do is I can do a variable called left equals params left dot to I, and then another variable right equals params
Change the value. It should be
right dot to I. So right here, instead of that, I can change those to the variables. So let me just copy and paste this. And then just change the operation to minus, times, and then divide. So that's a little bit shorter, right? That simplified it a little bit just by defining those variables first. Yeah, yep. And then let's see. Since we're interpolating over here result as a string, and then anytime we interpolate a string, Ruby automatically calls the 2s method. So right here we don't need that 2s method. So we can just have that, right? And that makes it a little bit shorter, right? So let's see.
Say that one more time. You said when Ruby interpolates.
When you do string interpolation right here with the pound brace and then another brace, what Ruby is doing is automatically it's gonna call .2s on this expression right here. So if it's an integer, it's gonna call .2s and it's gonna convert it to a string. So we don't need to do .2s. We only need to do .2s when we're doing a string plus another string. So
That
we have
does
this.
look a lot less
Yeah, it looks like a lot less.
work. Yeah, and I think that's what I was asking because it was like worded a lot. It was like it was redundant. In other words, it was just on and on. So I'm guessing a shortcut was what I was asking about.
Okay. Yeah, so you can use this shortcut. There's different ways of making this shorter. There's I don't know, do you know of a way to make it shorter?
You can make it into one line.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you make it into one line, Jorge?
You would use a method send. So with the send method, if you do that send, you can pass a string and it will call a method with that string name. So it would be params left. Yep. Right. Send operation, params operation. Yeah, you got
Oh,
it
yeah.
right.
Params.
Operation, comma, second argument is.
Right.
Yep.
And that's it, right?
That's it, yeah.
So let's see if that works. So 6 times 7, 42. Yep, so it works. So that works, and that's just one line. But if you did the if statement, I think the if statement is I would, that's still a good answer because you're understanding, what you're supposed to do. This
Okay.
this send method, you probably didn't know that existed, right?
Yeah.
But you know that if statements exist, so I guess right now your level, the if statement was the right way to do it.
It's doing, and like, even though it looks very obscure and obtuse, like it's essentially doing the same thing. You have to remember, you have the left information. In the middle, you're accessing the string, so it's either plus, equals, division, or multiplication. And then on the right, you're grabbing the number and passing that to that method. So it's the same thing, it's just a little bit more obscure here.
You just still combine that information together. You need the same time.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of this. I don't think I've just been saying until I get more advanced. So I don't know what's going on.
And so I'm going to go back to just the if statement. So any questions?
Also, to like as an insight, Google is my friend, right? Like I didn't know, but you kind of like think of the problem, right? I Googled how to turn a string into a method, and that's what we were doing. So that's what told me what method was useful to me at the time.
Yeah, any other questions? All right, so I'm going to close Sinatra, and then so if I do in the command line git status, we have this app.rb file, this public file, and so I'm just going to add all of that and then commit it. And this is the arithmetic form. Right, so now I'm not going to do the commit unless you guys want me to commit it to GitHub so you can see that again.
I have to copy that sort of thing again.
Yes, please.
Do it to, okay. All right, so let me go to GitHub. And then I'm going to create a new repository. So I'm going to call it forms. Create repository. And then you just need to copy this command line argument that's basically just adding GitHub to the repository that you just created. The one we've been working with. So paste that there. And then the first time that we push from this repository to GitHub, we want to do a git push -u origin master. So paste that. Now it should be on GitHub. So if I refresh, and now you see that it's on GitHub. Right? And so I have my app.rb file there, and my form is here too.
Tools and get status today. Space that.
Thank you.
You want to see? Okay. All right. So one thing that that you guys might have noticed is that in both cases right here in form, I have HTML body and then HTML body here at the bottom. And then I also have it here in my result, right? So if we think of the idea that we're just creating a string to send back to the browser, and that string just has HTML code, then we could put the HTML body like in a variable, and then append those things whenever we need to, right? So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to do. Let me delete this right here. I'm going to set a variable header. It's going to equal to HTML and then body.
Let's see what I need, just copy and paste.
Yeah, so that, well, you'll see in a little bit. And then footer is going to be the HTML close, and then, oh, actually, should be body first, body, and then HTML. Okay. So then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to remove the HTML and body. And then I'm just going to do a header plus that string and then plus footer. That should be the same thing, right? Because the only thing that I've done is I put that into a variable and then footer into a different variable, and then I just put them around it, right? So if I refresh this, I need to start Sinatra again. Right, so you have that, and then you see that HTML body is first, and then close body, close HTML is second. Right? So I just put it in a variable, right? I think that's easy to understand. But what that enables me to do now is if I have, let's say that I want to do another page in Sinatra, and let's see, this one is welcome. With this one, I can reuse the same variable, header. And then let me do an H1 that just says welcome. And then plus footer. So let me restart Sinatra. So now if I go to /welcome, it works. And then if I look at the source code, you can see that it has HTML body and HTML body right there. Right. So that probably doesn't look that impressive, right? Like, all right, that's nothing that amazing. But what we can do is, instead of having this HTML body here, we can load this string from a file. So we can do file.read. File.read just loads the contents from a file and puts them in a string. So file.read header.html. And then I'm going to do also the same thing for the footer. So file.read footer.html. And then I'm going to create two files. So one file is header.html. And then another file is footer.html. And in header, I just want to put HTML without not the closed HTML, just the open HTML. And body without the closing, just the opens. And then in body, I want to do the opposite, close body and then close HTML. So let me restart Sinatra. And restart this. And so we should have the same thing. So we have the HTML body close, right? But now that's coming from these files that we created. We created the header.html file. That's for the beginning of the HTML document. And the footer.html, that's for the end of the document. But now we can do, in here, we can do like a script or style. And let's do H1. Let's see, color green, for example. So if we refresh that, didn't work. So what do we do? Oh, we need to restart Sinatra. So you see that it's green, right? Now the cool part is that if I go to form.html and then let's do 3 + 3. Now this is also green. So we're reusing that code that is in this file, the header file. We're reusing it in several places. We were using it in 2 places, right? So every time I respond with my HTML, I do header plus whatever inner HTML I want inside, and then plus footer. Right? Any questions? So later on, we're going to see how Rails uses this concept to make things even easier in terms of in how to do this. Like Rails automatically does this for us later on. But I just want to make sure that you have the understanding that we're always trying to send back to the user. We're trying to send back an HTML document. And we're essentially encoding that HTML document, or the type of that HTML document is a string that just has HTML. All right, questions? All right, so 8:25. I don't think we can start anything new right now, but yeah, we'll continue on Saturday. I'll see you guys on Saturday. And remember that Saturday we have a quiz. That's gonna be on this stuff on Sinatra's type of stuff. So yeah. And remember to submit your resume app. All right. You had a question, Christian? Do you want to ask it?
Yes, sir. So, forgive me, but I'm having difficulties understanding how you start. Whenever you start, so let's say you create a folder, like when you did the website last class,
Uh-huh.
and then you load it up to basically look at it as a web page. So I'm having issues understanding how to do that.
Okay. So
You understand what I mean?
I can try to go through it and see if it makes sense. So so I'm gonna create another directory. Let's call it I'm gonna call it site,
Right.
and then I'm gonna start Apache. So service Apache 2 start, and then if I go to the same place, now you see that folder site is there.
Right.
So in your site folder, you can just create a file. When you call it whatever you want, you can call it resume.html. It just has to be HTML.
Right.
And then that's where you start putting your HTML. So let me do
Yeah. Okay.
HTML file.
So
I can just click on site, and then that's the file that I just created, resume.html. Click on it, and you see that now it's this. Now the browser knows now that it's an HTML file, and it's gonna render it as an HTML file.
Okay. So the command, would you mind returning to Cloud9, please?
Sure.
And then the error.
So that command, service Apache 2 start, that's what starts the server that allows you to see the web page per se.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like Sinatra, but it's just for files. It's just doing files. It's not. We're not going to do any code.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Because I was working on my resume yesterday, and I created a file under the website folder, and I named it resume.html. But for some reason, when I try to update the actual file, it wouldn't really recognize it, and I couldn't understand why. So
So
that's,
do you think that this might have been the reason why?
I think so. So I'll try it out tonight, see what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is that make sure that once you're done, testing and everything, turn off Apache. So you
Right.
do by service Apache 2 stop, and that stops Apache because you can't have Sinatra and Apache running at the same time.
Okay. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And will you be posting the video of the class tonight?
Yeah, I'm gonna post it right as soon as this is over.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Yep. Any other
Have a great
questions?
night.
You too.
No, sir, I'm good. Bye. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
All right, so, We'll see you guys on Saturday then, and have a good night.